Hello, welcome to Taryn Study. I'm Taryn Tyler, and today I am here in Balboa Park to talk to some local San Diego poets about their poetry.
Hi, Taryn.
When did you first start writing poetry?
I can't remember. I mean, seriously, just this January. But I've definitely been writing for many years, just kind of for fun.
Why do you write poetry?
It might sound like a controversial answer, but I write for other people. I hear so many other poets say that they write for themselves, and I love that and I admire that. But for me, I write for other people. I write to make other people smile. I write to make other people laugh, and that is absolutely 100% why I do it.
Could you read us one of your poems?
Yes, I'd love to. This one's called Happy Place. We all have a happy place, somewhere that we can go, where we feel relaxed or inspired, where we can recuperate and grow. It may be somewhere that we have support, perhaps with 4 embracing walls, or it may be in the open air, amongst the mountains or waterfalls. Visit that place whenever you can. Nothing can stop you. It's free. No excuses, not money, time, nor distance. Just find it in your memory. I write about things going on in my life. So I think of my audience particularly as definitely a good subset of them are mums. And I talk about everyday life, marriage, parenting, kids, things going wrong, ups and downs of everyday life, really.
And why do you think you gravitate towards those topics?
I don't know. I think I like to make everything, I like to try and give everything a twist and turn it on its head. I think there's so much hardship in the world right now, and I think what I try and do is gravitate towards these everyday topics and just make people try and see them from a different point of view, and just lighten the mood for everyone that's got hard things going on or serious things going on. I just try and choose these everyday topics and just try and kind of, make the world a little bit sunnier if I can.
Like back in the day, poets were like rock stars or whatever,
right?
Or they were like, you would have your Byron and everyone.
Yeah.
Do you think poetry is still relevant today?
I think it's becoming more and more relevant. I think that there was absolutely a dip in people's interest in poetry for a while, but I think with the rise of Rupi Kaur and Atticus and everyone, I think it's absolutely, certainly poetry on Instagram is really on its way up. I'm flabbergasted when I go into boutique stores these days. There's always 2 or 3 poetry books laid out, and I think that's really refreshing and really exciting for the art form that is poetry.
And on that note, if someone wanted to stalk you on the internet, where
Yes.
would they find you?
I am the Witty Britty on Instagram.
For me, poetry is a form of art, and it's food for my soul, as corny as that might sound a little bit. It is like very therapeutic for me, and it's a way that I can express my feelings and emotions, opinions, and beliefs.
When did you start writing poetry?
When I was 8, I wrote my first poem about my mom for Mother's Day, and it was talking about like her red lips and the smell of her perfume. It was really like I really tapped into the senses on that one. So I liked writing about love and heartbreak a lot, and then lately I've been getting more into speculative poetry, writing like fantasy and sci-fi, so incorporating other genres into poetry. I think that's kind of fun.
Why do you think you're drawn to those particular topics?
Because of the escapism that comes with it, like being able to use my imagination and like kind of the whole world building aspect is what really draws me to it. And since I was a kid, I've always loved like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. Fantasy is a genre I've been really drawn to.
Do you have any particular poets who really inspire you?
Yes, I love Pablo Neruda. And who else do I like? I like John Keats a lot, and a lot of romantic poets, and I love Edgar Allan Poe, so I like creepy poetry too.
Do you think you could read us one of yours?
Yeah, I brought my favorite poem by Pablo Neruda. It's Sonnet 17. It's a romantic one. So, I don't love you as if you were a rose of salt, topaz, or arrow of carnations that propagate fire. I love you as one loves certain obscure things, secretly, between the shadow and the soul. I love you as the plant that doesn't bloom but carries the light of those flowers hidden within itself. And thanks to your love, the tight aroma that arose from the earth lives dimly in my body. I love you without knowing how or when or from where. I love you directly without problems or pride. I love you like this because I don't know any other way to love, except in this form in which I am not nor are you. So close that your hand upon my chest is mine, so close that your eyes close with my dreams.
So if our lovely viewers wanted to stalk you on the internet, where would they go?
So I have a website which is essentially just my blog. It's erbuendia.com, so erbuendia.com, and you can find me on Instagram under the same name, erbuendia.
When did you start writing poetry?
It was probably elementary school, just like little tiny poems, haikus and stuff like that. But it wasn't until I think it was 8th grade that we had a poetry assignment, and everyone was kind of grumbling about it and didn't want to do it, and I was stoked about it. And that was the first time that like a teacher kind of like was like, oh, you seem to have like a knack for this. Maybe you should try doing this more if you enjoy it. And I don't remember entirely what that poem was, but I know there was a wolf involved.
Nice.
Yeah.
Why do you think you like writing poetry?
I think a part of it is the challenge to pare down either a concept or a theme or a feeling into the most succinct and purposeful format. I really like poets who do like enjambment and who take up like parts of the page and they actually use like the blank space as a part of the poem itself. So it's just really like fun. It's like a challenge. It's so fun. And then mostly it's just I love words and getting to like play with words and how they sound, and I'm a huge fan of alliteration, so yeah. Anytime I can use that, work it in.
What kind of topics do you usually write about?
Typically it's about being a woman, and that at least lately that's what it's been about. Other times it's kind of childhood memories or a certain setting, like going to Las Vegas. I wrote a poem about like the environment and the vibes and the people and what you see. But right now it's definitely just with the purpose of like empowerment and just kind of tapping into what it means to be a woman for me. So. Just yesterday, I found this poet named Lucille Clifton, and she's an African-American poet who wrote between like she's born in 1936 and then passed away in 2010. But one of her poems that I love is called Homage to My Hips, and it's all about like celebrating just, in the particular poem, like an African-American female's body as a source of like power and freedom and sexuality, and just like fully embracing that notion. And when I read her poetry, I feel so empowered, and I kind of feel like she's reaching out through the words and like touching me and being like, I see you exactly as you are, and I accept it as exactly as you are. And so having that experience with her poetry, it just kind of compels me to be like, well, we can all do what she's doing. Like, we can kind of be her feet on the ground now that she's passed away. And it's so important to me, I think, for like young girls to developing women to have this sense of like power for being a woman, because being a woman is a pretty astounding thing. We can do some pretty great things with our bodies, and we have some great minds, and we're tapped into emotions in a different way, and instead of it being like a burden on us, it can be something to celebrate. And I'm like obsessed with her right now. Last night I was just like looking on my phone, just trying to find any information I could about her. I just feel really drawn to her, and I am a big Emily Dickinson fan. I feel like if her and I like were alive at the same time, we'd be like friends, as in like pen pal friends, because that's how she had her friendship. So I love her. Yeah.
It's like internet friends, the old-fashioned way.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in the olden days, like poets could like reach like rock star status. It's a little bit different now, but do you think poetry is still relevant in today's culture?
Absolutely. And especially, I feel like that belief has been reaffirmed just recently for me, because like I met you at an open mic, and it was like this whole bookstore filled with people there for poetry, whether to read it or to enjoy it. And it just kind of reminded me like, oh, like poetry is important and it touches people in a certain way, and it's just expansive in what you can do with it. I don't necessarily write poetry to become something that might be like a rock star status. But for me, poetry is like how I started writing. It was like the first thing I did when I started writing, and so it always has just kind of like a special place in my heart for me.
Do you think you can read us one of your poems?
Yes. This one is titled Dear Girl, Dear Woman. Sweet girl, 10 and timid, round, flushed, freckled cheeks, framed by curls kept wild, collecting dandelion fluff. Remember, you believe in the soft petals, the loosened flower seeds, carrying your wishes upon the wind. Sensual woman, tentative and tired, round, curved, widened womb, touched by yellow light, kept warm, humming inward. Remember, you belong to a lineage of mothers whose worn and weathered hands remained soft. Curious girl, barefoot in the dewy, damp grass, content in the company of caterpillars, fingernails dirtied, graceful, gracefully, colliding into the spaces in between. Remember, tell your stories like a lioness, with appetite, with your arms, legs, flourish, fumble, find the ground again. Cautious woman, bare in the drowsy dusk, calm in the presence of whimsy pink clouds, arms tattooed, grateful, gratefully struggling out of too tight skin. Remember, live like the moth, with conviction, with your core, muscle, clamber, claw, connect, again. Brave girl, sundress ruffled, remember to sweetly sew in a pocket for a summer warm tomato, fuzzy, plucked from the vine. Butterfly woman, skin scarred, remember, boldly bite into the flesh of a sun-sweetened tomato, drip seeds down fuzzy bare legs that are resolutely rooted in the soil.
If our viewers wanted to stalk you on the internet,
Yes.
where can they find you?
So I'm on Instagram as Nutmeg and Whimsy, and I also have a blog, which is www.nutmegandwhimsy.com, and that's a good source for finding my art and writing and pretty much anything else if you want to get in contact.
When did you start writing poetry?
Started when I was about 13, I think in 9th grade, just when I was bored in class and kind of my mind drifting away from whatever was going on in class, I'd start writing. So about that time.
Why do you like to write poetry?
Just allowed me to, I guess, be creative, to express myself and I guess things that were going on in my mind or within my heart or within my feelings, and gave me a way to creatively express those things. Maybe to take my mind away from things that were going on at the time, or even to entertain myself.
Do you have a favorite poem?
I do. Would you like to hear it?
Yes.
Okay. We made yield signs and guardrails for people like me, not so I would slow down or take caution. We made yield signs and guardrails to keep people not like me safe from people like me. You see, I have trouble staying between the lines, and I tend to run off track. I've teeter-tottered between nice and neat or wild and free, trying not to speak or bring attention to myself. I've had my days of doing as I was told, eating hollow fruit from the follower's tree that was planted in my mind around the same time I was learning to speak. Now I take no issue with planting seeds. Growth is encoded in our nature through our Creator. I'm just grateful for my sense of awareness to knowing what I'm feeding myself is not filling me up. Misdirected by the misconception that rather than a garden, life is an assembly line. For so long I neglected tending mine, until my lack of flavor led me to consider the consequence of leaping off the conveyor. Then again, it's not like the decision was mine. You see, I have trouble staying between the lines, and I tend to run off track. So no matter the extent life becomes dissatisfying or unsettling, my coding wasn't embedded to default back to factory setting. Any attempt to control me only leads to my Control-Alt-Delete. It's not that I choose to shut down or freeze up. I just refuse to continue being fooled into believing that being moved along an assembly line at a set pace is anything different than standing in place. Could we all really have been assembled to move the same way? Well, at some point along the line, a drop of pixie dust fell in my eye and brought me to life. I was blind, but now I see. My legs can move and I can speak. Astounded when I look around me. An individual, but part of such a complex system. Above all else, I can think. My wheels are turning as I turn gears greater than my own. I move the system as I am moved by the system. My existence is no coincidence. How can I go wrong? I don't believe in accidents or mistakes. If that means having to walk through the fire and get burned some, it's just another opportunity to learn from. Each step along the way gets used to build my staircase to heaven. All wreckage gets recycled. I've had my fair share of collisions, but I now know how to make my own repairs. That doesn't mean you shouldn't beware. While the master of assembly created us all as part of the same design, I wasn't created to stand between the lines. If you're afraid of a few door scrapes and dings, I suggest you slow down and take caution. We made yield signs and guardrails for people like me.
Very nice. What poets inspire you?
Oh, funny thing is I was never into poetry. Once I came to San Diego, and maybe a year or so before I came here, I started getting out and going to open mics and writing a bit more, and I met some local poets in Atlanta, and then coming here, and more so the poets that I met locally here. So Chris Vanoy has been a great inspiration for me. You've been a great inspiration for me. I remember the first time I was asked to feature, and I was thinking I wanted somebody to feature with me. I was like, yeah, I want Taryn to feature with me. So Jim Moreno, Michael Clam, I didn't meet him until later on, a little while after I'd been here. I know I'm leaving some people out. Michael Turner Ortega. Those are the ones that come to mind first, but probably still leaving a couple of people out.
Do you think poetry is in any way outdated? Because I know it used to be very, very popular, like back in the day, and then it kind of had a big, lack of interest for a while. Do you think that's changed?
I think it's definitely changed, especially with our modern society and people wanting more stimulation, not taking the time to read something or to listen to someone or something that's expressed creatively, where what's being said may not be as on the surface or may have to be thought about. I think a lot of times people are going for, I don't want to say shallow, but things that don't require as much thought or as much time to bring about that feeling of satisfaction.
And do you have any social media channels that people can find your poetry on?
getting back into music recently, I did create an Instagram, actually, and a Facebook, because I wasn't on any social media for a while, and people recommended that I create some social media pages. So I have, my Instagram is Via the Messenger, VIA the Messenger. My Facebook is Via the Messenger as well. Can't remember if I have any poetry on there or not, or if it's just music. But in the process of creating more and putting more music and poetry on both of those.